there any more questions relating to this interacting with client stuff?
We definitely have questions. We've been, just for those of you who might be new to Creative Live, we do all the questions that you put in the cues room, we put into a document, we've got them here, so we'll ask them as we have time. So we do have some time. Love, if you guys have any questions, we're gonna ask a couple questions as well, and you guys have a chance to as well. So be thinking about that. I would love to start with one from Ahab's Ghost. Says, Kurt, how active of a role would you say you have as a somewhat passive audio engineer versus a very involved producer? And does it change on a per job basis? Or?
Yeah, it's very, very much so. It changes based on, I probably should have talked about this in the interacting with clients thing. There's a whole segment on, that I should have talked about, which is after identifying each member's role within an ensemble is identifying what role they expect you to play. And that's crucial in determining how you behave within a studio. Are they looking to you to strictly engineer their record? Or are they looking to you to really produce their record and direct them? I think that first of all, I should back up a second and say that I think that the term producer is often thrown around too liberally. I would say that the majority of the records that I work on, I'm an engineer, although people frequently credit me as a producer. Let's say like a band like Nails, for example. If you're familiar with them, when I record a Nails album, it's usually less than a week, and those guys, particularly Todd, the guitarist singer, have a very specific vision of what he wants out of the record, and he's really the producer. I mean, I may have been credited as a producer, and I certainly have a vision for what I want, and my stamp is certainly on their albums, but I'm really the engineer. So, and as engineer, my opinion only goes so far. I don't get the final call on anything there. They always get the final call on what's the guitar tone, what's the mix, and what's the song structure, and so forth and so on. But some bands really want a lot of interaction. I'll scale how much I chime into, say, arrangements and tones and production aesthetic based on A, how much they want that, and B, how much time I'm spending on the record. If it's like a week-long project, there's probably not really time for a whole lot of production unless we're just doing a song or two. But if it's like a month-long project, I might be a little more heavy-handed about that. We might actually spend a few days or maybe up to a week just sort of demoing and pre-production before we even start the record, just to make sure that the songs are totally dialed in before we start recording. And in that case, sometimes I even write a riff or two. That happens. So it really is. It's all about sort of determining what your role is, what your role should be, and then also understanding when you're overstepping your bounds, and understanding when it's time to step up and take the reins, and figure out when the group is kind of stalled and when they need a little push. You think that answers the question?
Yeah.
Cool.
So an interesting one, kind of along the lines of coaching them to get the right performance. And this is something that I think is an interesting question that kind of informs the rest of your process. What does Kurt have to say about the band being tight and in sync on the beat in terms of sound? I'm asking because some wild, chaotic bands aren't always tight all the time, but then again, sometimes they sound awesome. How do you sort of balance that, like loose versus tight, without click tracks?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really in the group's hands, and I think you want to play to the group's strengths. Luckily, let's continue on with Nails as an example. Like, that band is a wild animal. They're certainly not the tightest band I've ever recorded, but they've got this sort of wild, raw energy about them, and so sort of like grid-based editing for that band would actually, I think, be a hindrance to them, because the excitement from that band comes from the rawness of them, I think. And there's certainly other bands kind of doing that style that are maybe a little bit more precise, but I think that they're not as exciting and not as raw. So if that's the strength of the band, then I try to capture and enhance what that strength is. So it might mean some live recording. It might mean making sure there's tons of feedback every time the guitars have a little pause. It might be employing a lot of room mics on drums and guitars and whatnot. Maybe it's handheld, super distorted vocals or something. I think it's important to know the band that you're recording, and if you can go see them live, awesome. Or if not, watch some videos on YouTube and try to get a feel for what their live shows are like. And if it's it's a kind of a wild, live feeling band, and that's the impression that they want to present on their record, do that. But if it's a band that wants to feel, super tight and precise and clean, then that's your goal too. Then you have to figure out a way to further that goal.
So, how about note from Zach Denham? Could Kurt discuss endless mix notes for a band and how to stop the madness?
Yes, I am. I'm going to talk about that tomorrow in our mixing session. I have a whole section on how to do mix revisions, how to interact with the client and solicit feedback from them, and revise the mix in a logical progression.
We've got a great one here from RL. Can you talk about dealing with clients and finance? Pluses and minuses of, say, charging a flat day rate no matter who it is versus coming up with creative ways of getting yourself paid properly for your time.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people struggle with that, and I actually put out a call on my Facebook maybe 6 months ago or so about that, because I was curious about. People ask me a lot actually if when they email me and say, hey, what are your rates? And then I tell them, and they say, is mixing included in that? And to me, that's duh. My mortgage is the same no matter what I'm doing. If I'm recording a band or mixing a band or sitting at home waiting for a band that's late or whatever. So my rates are based on my expenses, and I certainly record for the love of recording, and I charge what I charge so that I can continue to do it. And every person's situation is different. So I'm actually not going to have real great advice here. I apologize, but I'll say that every person's financial situation is different. Every person's sort of studio situation is different. Maybe you have a studio similar to mine, or maybe you have maybe you're an engineer who's freelance working out of another studio, or maybe you're a house engineer in another studio, or maybe you have some sort of setup in your garage or your basement, or maybe you're a digital musician. I guess you got to think kind of well, what can you charge? And what is your time worth? And also, what are your expenses? If you charge too little, can you even continue to do this? I have a friend who's a fantastic and well-known recording engineer, but he's also I don't know the details of his finances, but I believe that he's quite wealthy from work outside of audio. So he mostly records bands for free. He doesn't do it very often. Maybe he makes 5 records a year or something like that. But he does all that stuff for free just for the love of music, because he doesn't need to make any money through recording. So yeah, it's really all about what you should charge is based on your situation. And I also think that it's important for clients not to judge a person's quality of work based on what they charge, because everybody has a different situation. Sometimes I was talking to a friend of mine recently who has a client who's kind of putting him in a bidding war with another studio, sort of, and he doesn't really want to participate in that bidding war because he has certain expenses. He has a studio that he has to maintain, and there's rent there, and there's equipment that has to be maintained, and he can't charge less than he charges. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to continue making records. When it comes to, but I think one of the component of that question was deadbeat bands, and that it just happens. there's certainly, I'm probably owed like 10 grand right now by various bands, and sometimes people don't pay you, and it's bad karma for them. And there's not a ton you can do. You can slander them, and or you can get aggressive with them and sort of pursue them aggressively. But I'm wary of doing that for fear of burning certain bridges, because bands are friends with other bands, and they have, if you're an asshole to them, they're gonna let their friends know in other bands that you were bad to them. So just think about karma, and think about benevolence and spreading goodwill as you're tracking somebody down. If there's somebody that you really don't trust, there's certain bands I know that like cancel all the time, or they'll book time 3 or 4 or 5 months in advance, thinking like, oh yeah, we're totally gonna like write songs before the date, and then like a week comes up, like a week before they're gonna record with you, check in with them, like, hey, how's songwriting coming along? And they're like, we haven't written anything, and then they cancel on you, and then you lose your time. So sometimes like a band like that, either like a band that I know is gonna do that to me, or a band that I don't know personally, I'll try to get a deposit from in advance to confirm the dates, and that can be helpful. And then it makes them financially invested in making sure that they're prepared and that they pay you, and because they have to pay you up front. And make sure that if you do take a deposit, that the band understands that the deposit is not is tied to a specific set of dates. Some bands will think like that they can cancel last minute and then, postpone last minute, and that all of their deposit will apply to their new session. But you can't really work that way, because you lost a week or two's worth of work, and you have rent or a mortgage or something that you have to pay, and now all of a sudden it's too late to book something else into that time slot that would otherwise cover your expenses. But just be fair and open about the way that you handle billing, and you should be fine. There's one other thing I was going to say about that. I spaced on it. I don't know. Money.
That was great. I love that.
Money sucks. I try not to like focus on money too much, because it's it really is. It's like worrying about money is awful, and money between friends is awful, and you want to have like an amicable relationship between the people you're working with, and so you don't really want to like harp on the money thing, but it's necessary. Hey, you guys are going to reimburse me for my extra bags on the plane, right?
I would love to, Kurt. I really would. Unfortunately, it's out of my hands.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, buddy. I think we got a question here in the room.
Yeah, can you maybe touch base on getting or being the right kind of, or having the right kind of objectivity? Like, I know a lot of DIY guys out there try to record their own bands, and maybe they're not hard enough on themselves, or hard enough on their band, or too hard, or how do you be productive and still come out with a good finished product, I guess?
Yeah. It's tough, especially when you're recording your own band, because you have to wear two hats. And I think that people define their relationships with each other based sort of on how they interact with each other when they first meet. So if you're playing in a band with a group of people, they know you as the guitar player, or they know you as the songwriter, and they think of you as like you're a peer in that ensemble. But then when it comes to recording your own ensemble, now all of a sudden you're in charge. And sometimes it can be hard to put your foot down and let the peers from your band know that you're in charge of the recording, or sometimes it's hard for them to, depending on their personality type, sometimes it's hard for them to relinquish that control to you to be in charge of the recording. And I think I don't have an easy solution. I think that just as you do more of this, you build confidence in yourself, and they build confidence in you. And I think it's like anything. It's just practice, and experience. You can't just jump right into it and expect to excel at it. You're just going to spend a lot of years and make a lot of mistakes, and hopefully, and I mean, I'm still doing that. I don't think I'm very far from perfect, and I'm still learning and improving, and building confidence in myself, and building confidence in my clients. And I think that's how you do it. Does that help?
Yeah, I mean, do you ever ask your bandmates or whoever, hey, did I suck on this recording or anything like that? You know,
Maybe
Feedback, yeah, that is a big one.
maybe maybe not. Probably not in those terms, but I certainly want to make sure that they're happy, and I will check in with them as we're approaching the end of the record. And if I feel like they're not, what happens to me a lot when I'm mixing is that, you know, for some reason, like I'll mix a record and people won't really give me a whole lot of comments. I think that some people have the feeling that engineers make records or producers make records and the bands don't really make records, but no, that's not the case. I think bands make a record and my job is just like not to fuck it up. So I want them to really interact with me and provide me with a lot of feedback, and the more feedback they provide me with, the better the mix is going to be. So I find myself checking in with them a lot towards the end of the mix, and if they're not providing a lot of feedback, to make sure that I know that it's wanted and welcome, and please provide me with as much feedback as possible. And then sort of a little more on topic, bands that I've recorded more than once, sort of as we're setting up to do, say, our second or third record together, I'll be like, so what did you like about the last record, and what do you think we could have done better, and or what do you want to focus on improving for this record? And then they'll tell me, this could be better, or I like this about the record, but I want to make it more such and such. Yeah, it's not usually, if I really fucked it up, they probably wouldn't come back to me.
it really sucks when it's your own band, maybe.
Yeah, and or maybe it's just that they're lazy, and because we all live, well, except for our drummer now, we all live pretty close to each other. They just don't want to travel to record with somebody else. But maybe they seem to enjoy, or they seem to like the results we've gotten recordings enough that they've entrusted me to continue to make records. And I know that I'm very thankful to have a group of people to play with that have enough confidence in me that they trust that I can make a record. At the same time too, like I want to have those kind of working relationships with everybody that I work with. I like, in my circle of friends, I kind of have like a bit of a closed economy. I know that like if I need a carpenter, I can call like this guy from that band, and if I need a record label, I can talk to somebody from within my community to put out a record, or same with mastering engineers and artists and whatnot. Like Jake, the singer of my band, he does all of our artwork, and he's a fantastic artist and graphic designer, and we have like 100% confidence in his ability to create incredible packaging. And and I'm thankful that the other guys in my band have that same confidence in me in making records. But that's like, it's just about building trust, and that takes time, and doesn't happen overnight. But just keep at it, and it'll be great.